What's going on, guys? Still here. Today is going to be the first episode of the basic CDK tutorial. Basically, the goal of this is going to be the most important things, that are also the most basic, that will allow you to make a mission like I have. Gonna try and do some of this today. Hopefully, I can get at least one episode done, and we'll go from there. So, when you first open up the CDK, which I will link the download to all of this in the description, you have to go and download the War Thunder Cdk, and most importantly, you want to put it inside of your main War Thunder folder, because that's how it accesses the assets and whatnot. So you're going to want it inside here. See, as you can see, it says War Thunder Cdk. And it's got all the CDK stuff. There's three things. There is, if I can minimize for a second, there's the asset viewer, which you can see there, the location editor, and the War Thunder mission editor. Asset viewer and location editor you do not need to make missions. Location editor is how people make custom areas or custom hangars. Asset viewer is how you view different models. I have not messed with that too much, and honestly I've never gotten it to work right or to actually see what other people can see. I don't know anything about it. So what you're going to want is the War Thunder mission editor. So when you open it, after downloading it and putting it in your War Thunder game directory, you'll get this select binary dump file. And as you can see, you've got avg_abandoned factory.bin, skyscraper city bin, Egypt, Africa, Saipan, Britain. So some of the maps in game that you know do not have the same name. So Egypt Sinai, well that's obviously Sinai. Africa Desert is, I believe it's El Alamein. Yes, it's El Alamein. Okay, so as you can see, this is the El Alamein tank map. One important thing you want to note when viewing some areas such as Fulda, personally I've gotten lost on Fulda because the maps, if I just keep trying to zoom out here, will run on for an infinite amount of time. Basically you want to find the tank map as closest to where you loaded up the map as possible. So as you can see, that's the Alamein tank map. One thing I want to go back, if you want to change what binary dump you're looking at, aka the level, you hit this, it's over on scene view, and you hit the little folder looking thing, set level binary dump, brings you back to the screen. Basically it'll always show you the recently used maps. So as you can see, Britain, Saipan, Egypt, etc. that I've had. So if you want to open up a new file, as you can see it says C War Thunder levels, you hit open new file, you hit this, and you'll get War Thunder levels. Basically this is inside War Thunder, and where is it? Basically, again, this is why you want it inside of the War Thunder directory, because it makes accessing things much more simple. And these are already the levels that are already in your War Thunder folder, even before you install the CDK, I'm pretty sure. So these are all the maps in the game. So a few things you can probably just infer, but air is an air map, arcade are arcade maps, like Air Arcade. AVG is a ground map, AVN is a naval map, and some of them don't have anything that are usually some of the older maps or newer maps. They change the way they named things after a while, so you'll see some things having either air in front of them or not. So that's how you pick a level. So I guess for this demonstration, I'll pick We'll do Afghanistan. So it's gonna take a minute to load. And before you do this, by the way, you need to understand that the CDK will take a lot out of your computer, and also sometimes it'll spawn you under the ground. On maps like Afghanistan, this will take a lot out of your computer. In terms of, I believe it's honestly RAM intensive. I'm not entirely sure, or CPU intensive. And there's a few things for you to minimize for those of you that may be on lower NPCs that want to make things that you're going to need to keep in mind. So as you can see, we're on Afghanistan with the Bagram base. There's roads, and this is pretty much exclusive to air maps. Some maps that say El Alamein, which have an air RB equivalent. I can get into some specifics on that another time, but it will actually not have roads, I believe. So what I'm talking about is up here, as you can see in scene view, show splines. These are basically, as you can see, my FPS also kind of took a hit there, where AI that will be programmed, say like you'll see AI in ARB missions that follow a road. This is what they'll follow. Basically, all the roads are mapped out. One thing to keep in mind, where there's rivers and stuff, which ironically doesn't show the water in Afghanistan, there's no bridges. So you have to put the bridges in yourself. I don't know how Gaijin does it for their missions, considering a lot of the bridges aren't destroyable, or at least their icon is hidden, so I assume they might still be destroyable. But yeah, you have to put in bridges manually, and either way, you can see the spline, they'll just kind of clip through, which is why on maps like Korea, you'll see the tanks go over the bridges, and they'll just go under them and in the water, and honestly, it doesn't matter. So I try to avoid using bridges as much as possible. However, on air maps, there is no boundary limit for ground vehicles. So what I'm talking about is if I place down a tank on an air map, it can go anywhere. So if you have like a tank spawn, like if you're playing in a tank match, you can go anywhere. On ground maps, however, like Sinai, which is part of what ruined my Suez mission, it was supposed to be combined arms. What you see when you load into a game on Sands of Sinai or normal Sinai, that is basically the level inside of the level bin folder that only Gaijin can change in terms of server side. Client side, you can manipulate things, and that's too complicated and it doesn't even matter. But on ground maps, you're going to want to know that you can't go outside of a tank map on pretty much every ground map in the game. I don't think there's any ground map other than Tunisia, which has an air map. El Alamein, I don't believe it works. I haven't tried it. But yeah, it's something inside of the bin folder that only they can change. And I want them to change it for Sinai and put an air RB level separate for Sinai, so I can actually use tanks and combined arms. And I could do some really cool desert missions with that. But for right now, I can't do that. So that's enough of those semantics. I'm going to turn off the splines for now. You only really need them at the end when you want to set waypoints for ground units, but you don't need it, and it'll save you a lot of time. Another thing, which I don't have, I probably should have actually selected a ground map, is show nav mesh. Basically, it's like something they map out the paths on tank maps for. I don't really find it too important. Static collision and render static, I just leave these three alone. One of them actually crashed my editor once, and I don't know why. But yeah, so just for map-wise, for what you want to select, for what you want to make, just keep that in mind. You want to keep in mind if it's a ground map and you want to put tanks outside of the tank map, 99% of the time, it's not going to work. So if you want to make big open tank battles, you're going to have to do them on air maps, which have terrible geometry, as some of you might know if you've ever looked at the ground on Korea, where it's just these random green grass patches that are just like a 70-degree spike, and it's really stupid. So yeah. So before you even create a mission, you need to know what you want to make and what map you want to make it on. So in terms of the basics of that, that's how you open the map. That's how you look at some map details. You don't really need to use splines unless you're specifically making an AirRB mission or using AI ground units in a whole. So now we're going to go over the mission editor UI a bit. What we have going from left to right, we have select, and there's some tooltips for these or hotkeys. Move over surface, rotate, scale, drop object, select objects by name, show hide object props, edit layers. I have not messed with this. I'm only going to show you really what I've used. Show unit/area names, waypoints, unit icons, unit assets, draw object axis, select only zones, only effects, only units, and only waypoints. You can create different zones, whether it's a sphere, a cylinder, or a box, or a point zone, which I've actually never touched. Create effect, never used that. Create unit, way, and waypoint. I've never used way either. Honestly, I don't even know. That might be something involving splines. Maybe, I don't know. Create viewpoint. Haven't done that either. I assume that's for when you're loading in. Almost like if you've ever used Forge in Halo. That's basically a little camera icon. That's what I assume. I've never used it. Right here, you've got Armada, Object Group, Structures, Infantry, etc. This is like the different units you're going to select. I haven't used the tags. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, there's your language select. Now we've got new mission, load mission, save mission as, run mission. Those don't really work. You don't even bother. And we've got properties and triggers, which when you hit that, you'll see there's the trigger and mission info. Another thing, if for whatever reason, when you try to save and there's an error, you'll see up top this little icon, show hide console. Basically, that'll tell you if things are wrong. Not going to go over the top layer yet. A lot of that doesn't really matter too much. You can change your field of view, which I recommend to 90 if it isn't already. Level statistics, don't even bother. Car mode, TPS mode, that's just different views. So like you can view on the ground or you can view, in a car going fast. I guess it's just a faster camera. Zoom and navigate. These are snapping tools. Be careful when you're trying to do other things. You might turn these on. You don't really need these if you're trying to be like really, really specific. But you can if you want it. It doesn't matter. I don't really like using them. And I almost always accidentally turn them on because, as you can see, their hotkeys are S and A, which we'll get into in just a second. So, that's kind of the basics. Obviously, select is how you select things. Move is how you move units. Move over surface is how you move units as well. For when you're trying to just generally move stuff, so we're going to go ahead and add something. So I'm going to use a tank for this example. So as you can see, I hit tank models, hit create unit, plop the unit down. The hotkey to view the unit's stats and stuff is P. Whoops. There we go. So you've got that. And you can change it. Some dummy units. These are all the ground units that we can play in the game. This is all the high detailed models. So let's place down a T-72. Why not? So as you can see, another important thing that I ran over earlier, show unit assets. You want this on when you want to actually see how a unit is facing and how it's interacting with the ground a little bit. The game does kind of automatically set things, but if you want something really specifically set, whether it's on weird mapped terrain or whatever, you're going to want this on. I like having it on all the time. My PC can handle it. If you have a mission with a lot of assets, you might not want to turn this on when you already have a lot of the assets down because it'll really lag it out. As you can see, I just clicked it and it disappeared. And there it goes again. Also, it shows the autoloader animation constantly looping, but we'll ignore that. So, got the tank model. Over here on the properties, you can change its names. We'll change it to T-72. That's just to maybe so you know what the unit is without having to click on it. We've got other stuff. We got weapons and modifications. Modifications add, what you would add, like parts and stuff like that, because this is clearly 100% an AI vehicle. If you don't give it parts in FBE, it won't put fires out and it won't repair its tracks. So, and there's some other stuff which I can go into another time, accuracy and whatnot. But this is just how you basically plop down a unit. So if you want to move it, also if you want to move the camera around, I forgot to mention, that's spacebar and WASD keys. But when you press that and you can see your mouse again. W, as you can see, there's now arrows, is how you move units. Whether you can move them precisely on each axis. Y, X, and Z. Or you can grab this, which is the square, and kind of free form around two planes. So that's that should be X and Z. This is Z and Y. And then this is X and Y, which I've never really used that. I always just kind of move a unit with X and Z and then Y itself. That's how I do things. So when you have a unit and you spawn it in, say it's on the ground or it's in the sky and you want to plop it on the ground, this is going to be very, very useful for people who don't have good PCs and they cannot use unit assets, and they can't like drag it down and be like, oh yeah, it's whatever. Basically, if you're having trouble dictating whether or not the unit's on the ground, you just go over to drop object, which is Control-Alt-D, which is the hotkey, or you can just click it. It'll automatically snap the unit to the ground, and it shouldn't clip through the ground. So as you can see, the tracks are on the ground appropriately. So that's kind of the basics of moving stuff around and adding stuff in. Armada is aircraft, so we'll add one. They always spawn kind of high up in the sky. Where did he go? Did I misplace him? There we go. Oh, whoops, yeah. Spawns with the default A20. And as you can see, all of the on the right side here is all the units in the game that we can fly. Some of the other things, like object groups, if I add it, will be things like camps, which you probably can't see too well because it's clipping in all the other buildings. I'll drag it over here. So these are like your bombing point things. However, these are not bombing points themselves. These are just merely visual objects. I can get into some of the more advanced stuff later. Also, cargo zone seems to... Whoop. Yeah, see? Even with a really good computer, the CDK in general can just be really wonky at times. There we go. It can just take a minute. You just got to be careful. Clicking too fast like I do. Once you get kind of into the rhythm and you start clicking around really fast, you'll probably run into that more often. What the... Oh, there it is. Sometimes when you place down units, like say you want these on ground, which means that they're basically permanently stuck to the ground trenches, and you try to copy them, and how you do that is you have it on move, so you press W and then you hold down shift and you click and drag away. I can set the amount of clones, I can change their name. As you can see, I just deleted that. So visually you gotta either cycle these, and sometimes it works, or sometimes it breaks it, or just reopen the mission. So usually I don't really copy and paste them. I try to move them as much as possible. Another workaround is just to change it to the normal one and see it respawns them all. It's just a weird visual asset bug, and I really hate it, honestly. Makes putting trenches down kind of annoying sometimes. So hopefully you're all still following me here on how you should basically be able to plop stuff down. I have two monitors, by the way, so it might slip my mouse onto the other monitor, but it shouldn't, but whatever. If you have a single monitor, you won't run into really any issues with that kind of stuff. So, let's see. Alright, so for other things for the units, so say I want to give this T-72 a waypoint. So we'll have them here on the closed runway. Now I want to give him a waypoint to tell him to go somewhere. What's going to happen is I'm going to click the create waypoint, which is now depressed, and as you can see, it'll say select only unit waypoints. I'm going to go down here, and sometimes if you move the camera it doesn't take it, so you have to re-click it. Now we've got T72 underscore WP or waypoint underscore 01. So he will now move to that as fast as possible. Speed is in kilometers an hour, and I'm pretty sure it's not indicated speed. I think it's actually ground speed. Obviously, the T-72 is not going to go 300 kilometers an hour. More like we can set him to like 20, and he'll go at 20 kilometers an hour. Then there's TAS, which you can select. But so I guess it is an IAS then? I don't know. Move type, move straight, move zigzag, or move to zigzag, I should say. Zigzag, halt, use splines, and gather to. Splines, like I said earlier, it would basically get to this waypoint by following a road. It would like go off-road, or onto the road, follow it, and then go off-road again. I've never used zigzag, and honestly I don't know if it works, but it would basically just mean they go back and forth. And you can set the period and the amplifying of, like, I assume the distance. And then the wait time between each zigzag, I guess. I don't know. I've never really used it. I don't really see a point to use it. Never seen Gaijin actually utilize it, so. But yeah, so we had that. So now, with this is still depressed, the select only waypoints, I cannot click this tank. And honestly, I really wish this wasn't a thing and it would just stay off. There probably might be another setting somewhere to keep that off, but I haven't figured it out yet. So now I clicked it, and now I can actually select them again. So there you go. Plop down a unit, plop down a waypoint, tell him what to do, and move on his way. So in terms of laying down AI units and other assets, that's what you want to do. If you're making an AirRB mission, there's two ways that you can do this. Object groups, and you could scroll down, and you'll have what is known as Dynamic Airfield, or DYNAF. And it's different airfields that Gaijin has modeled in the game over the years. So you'll see like the Korea one, which if it doesn't, there you go. So this should be the, I believe, the North Korean base on the Korea air map. And obviously it's huge. When you place down an airfield, there's going to be dark texture, basically. Basically, that's like where you'll see where the airfield is, and then you'll see where the extra land will raise up to a certain point. You can see that that's what it does. I believe if you put it under the ground, it'll actually conform to the terrain, or it will cut into it. But I believe it'll end up more like that. Which also, by the way, I forgot to mention this. To rotate something, you press E, and then you've got the different axes as well. So, you know, green is now like an X, or a yaw axis, sorry. You get the idea, basically. Really no reason to rotate something up and down unless you really want to, because usually, like with the tank, it should conform to the terrain when you tell it to drop, basically snap to the ground. So there shouldn't be a reason. I'm going to delete that. Another way you could do airfields, I will get into in more complex stuff later, but we'll use Bagram. It'll involve areas, and honestly, you don't really need to do this unless you're doing it on a map. Like, say you want to use the air bases that are actually modeled into a map, but most of the time you don't need to do this. But I think for now, that's probably some pretty basic stuff, and that's already kind of a lot to take in for a lot of people. So yeah, that's pretty much, I'm gonna end it here for this episode of it. Hopefully you guys kind of understand. So just go in to the CDK. Again, I'll put the download link in the description, and once you download and you open it up and you get it all set up, just go in and mess around and kind of review what to do. This is like as basic as I'm going to get for now. This is just knowing what keys are what, plopping down units, telling them to do very, very basic things. When it comes to actually making a PvP mission for multiplayer, which is what I do most of the time, I don't really make single player stuff. We'll get into that later. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics. And also the waypoint thing I forgot to mention earlier. That's how you'll see your waypoints again. The problem with the CDK is, honestly, it's such a dated editor. A lot of this editing style to me is like what I used to use when I used to play Lock-On when I was a kid in the old Arma games. So this is very basic, and honestly, it's very dated. A lot of stuff randomly clicking itself in. Like, say I could select only units. Now I can't select a waypoint. Even though I can see a waypoint down here, I can't select it. It gets ridiculous, and you'll probably get frustrated, but as you use the CDK, don't worry, you'll get used to it, and you'll develop a rhythm. Sorry. So yeah, we're not getting to a save mission point, so we're not going to do that. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'm Steel Wolf, and I'll see you guys next time.